They stole our planets while we were still learning how to walk between the stars. And they did it with the casual cruelty of a child pulling wings off flies. The year was 2847 by the old Terran calendar. The same year the colony ship Pioneer's Hope finally limped into the Halcyon Reach system after a 93-year journey with the first wave of families who would plant cherry trees on a world that orbited a gentle orange sun. Children were already being born who had never seen Sol, who learned to walk on decks that smelled of fresh soil and possibility. Humanity had 12 thriving outer colonies. New Kyoto with its floating lantern festivals, Eos where the oceans glowed soft turquoise at night, Halcyon Reach where the rings cast triple rainbows every dawn, 12 worlds we had spent centuries bleeding for, worlds whose names were sung in lullabies back on Earth. Then the HFY Dominion arrived. They came in a fleet that eclipsed suns. Their ships were grown, not built. Living lattices of obsidian bone and golden sinew, each one the size of a continent and singing in frequencies that made human navigators weep at their consoles. Their first broadcast was delivered in perfect formal Terran, the voice like velvet dragged over broken glass. By right of superior claim and biological primacy, the following systems are hereby annexed as unoccupied preserves of the HFY Dominion. Indigenous primate population will be granted 11 standard days for orderly evacuation. Non-compliance will be interpreted as voluntary biomass donation. No negotiation. No appeal. No warning shots. On New Kyoto, the first conversion engine came down over the capital like a second moon. It unfolded in orbit, petals of black metal opening to reveal a core that pulsed the color of old blood. Within hours, the sky turned the color of rust. Cherry blossoms withered mid-bloom. Children woke, coughing black phlegm that smelled of copper and endings. The evacuation order reached Halcyon Reach while parents were teaching their kids to surf the ice rings. The oceans began to boil at the edges. The rings cracked and fell like glass rain. Eos Station recorded its last sunset as the conversion engine seeded the atmosphere with spores that rewrote oxygen into something that tasted like burning plastic. 8 billion people, 8 billion, were told they had 11 days to leave worlds their grandparents had died making habitable. Most never made it to the transports. The HFY were meticulous. They landed hunter-killer teams in golden armor that walked through refugee columns like reapers through wheat. They kept score. They recorded everything. They turned the screams of children into musical tones and sold the recordings as curios to allied species. When the last human transport lifted off New Kyoto, the HFY commander broadcast a single line that was played on loop across the burning planet. Silence at last. Sol answered with everything it had. The combined fleet, 3,000 ships crewed by people who had never known war. Only hope jumped in systems screaming for blood. Their railguns spat tungsten at velocities that cracked space-time. Their fusion torches painted the dark with blue-white fury. The HFY shattered them in 11 minutes. They didn't even bother with main weapons. They simply opened their mouths, literal mouths, living maws that dilated in the prows of their ships and sang. The song resonated with the iron in human blood. Ships ruptured from the inside out. Crews died with their eyes boiling in their skulls, while still trying to hold formation. The dreadnought Remember Why We Climb was the last to fall. Captain Elena Volkov, bleeding from ears and eyes, managed one final transmission before her ship became a brief, beautiful supernova. Tell the children we held the line. Tell them we're sorry we couldn't hold it longer. They never found her body. They never found any bodies. When the combined fleet was gone, the HFY parked a battle moon above Earth, a sphere of living obsidian that blotted out the sun for half the planet. They broadcast new terms. Sol system would remain as a museum. Humanity would be allowed to survive in diminishing numbers as historical curiosities. Resistance would result in immediate deorbiting of the battle moon and the conversion of Earth into a second HFY prime. The last free human ships, slow, ugly freighters packed with crying families and every seed we could carry, ran for the dark between galaxies. The HFY let them go. They assumed the void would finish what they had started. They renamed our 12 worlds after their emperors. They paved our capitals into pleasure plazas where HFY young learned to hunt the last human holdouts for sport. They built monuments on the bones of our cities that read in 12 different human languages and HFY formal. Here, the loud primates learned silence. Let their absence be a lesson to all lesser species. They threw festivals that lasted decades. They sold tickets to the burning of New Kyoto's cherry orchards as performance art. They turned the glowing oceans of EOs into light shows that spelled out HFY victory hymns. They never noticed the last evacuation ship. Remember why we left home. Registry scrubbed, transponder cold, did not run blindly. It followed a course plotted 3 centuries earlier by people who already suspected the galaxy might not be kind. They never noticed that every child on every fleeing transport was given a locket, or a pocket, or a sewn-in lining containing a single handful of dirt from the world they were forced to abandon, soil kept alive in vacuum jars, soil that remembered what a human sky smelled like. They never noticed the silence that followed was not surrender. It was counting. 333 years of counting heartbeats in the dark. 333 years of teaching children the exact coordinates of home. 333 years of growing new worlds inside hollow planets and cold arcs, worlds that had never known alien feet. The HFY told their children the humans had simply accepted their place and faded away. They never noticed the children were wrong. Because humanity had not faded, we had multiplied, 12 billion strong, and every single one of us carried a handful of dirt and a promise carved into our bones. We are going home. The monuments lied. The loud primates had not learned silence. We had only gone quiet long enough to teach the dark how to grow. And the dark grew children. 12 billion children who had never seen a sunrise, but knew exactly what one was supposed to look like. 12 billion children who carried entire worlds in their pockets. The theft was complete. The reclamation was just beginning. And it would begin with a single rust bucket freighter, 12 billion barefoot gardeners, and enough dirt to make the universe itself remember what home means. They stole our planets. We grew new ones in the dark. Now we were coming back to plant them. For 333 years, humanity vanished from every star chart, every census, every bedtime story the HFY told their young. They said the primates had scattered into the void and died like sparks from a dying fire. They were half right. We scattered. We did not die. We multiplied. In the dark between galaxies, in places the HFY had never bothered to map because nothing could live there. Humanity built cradles out of silence and spite. There was Hollow Haven, a rogue planet wandering the intergalactic void, its iron core gutted and turned into a single vast greenhouse, lit only by reactor glow and the soft green of growing thing. There were the 12 arcs, slow, ugly generation ships that drifted with engines cold, crews rotating through cryo while algae farms and peach orchards grew in rings that had once been playgrounds. There were the cloud crotches, entire Oort clouds seeded with habitat pods, where children learned to walk wearing mag boots under artificial stars painted on the inside of ice caves. Every child born in the dark was taught 3 lessons before they could speak. The names of the 12 stolen worlds, recited like prayers. The taste of recycled air and the smell of real soil kept alive in vacuum jars, like communion wafers. The promise carved on every bulkhead, every locket, every heart, we are going home. On their naming day, every child received a gift. A single handful of dirt. Soil grown from the original lockets carried by the evacuees. Soil that had never known Kay-Shari sky. Soil that had been passed down mother to child for 12 generations, like a relay baton made of earth itself. They kept it in lockets, around their necks, in pockets sewn inside ship suits, in tiny clay pots on family altars, next to holo images of sunsets no living person had ever seen. They were taught that dirt remembers. They were taught to terraform in the dark. In Hollow Haven, they learned to make air from starlight and algae, to coax wheat from basalt dust, to grow peach trees in hydroponic trays under red dwarf light that tasted almost like home. In the 12 arcs, they learned patience, how to wait 3 centuries without screaming, how to sing lullabies to children who had never felt real gravity, how to teach history from memory, because every book had been left behind to make room for seeds. They learned to count in Kay-Shari. Not their language. They refused to speak it, but their time, 333 years, was a sacred number, the exact length of a Kay-Shari imperial dynasty. Every child knew that when the 333-yard year dawned, the arcs would wake, the sea arches would open, and the long walk home would begin. They learned to fight without weapons, because they would not need weapons. They would have dirt, and dirt, carried long enough, becomes a world. The children of the dark grew tall and strange and beautiful. They had eyes that had never seen a horizon, so they dreamed in curves. They had bones grown light from low gravity, but hearts grown heavy with memory. They spoke 12 different dialects of Terran laced with words invented to describe things the Kay-Shari had never imagined. The smell of rain on soil that had never known rain, the sound of wind in trees that grew inside metal walls. They learned the names of every person who had died on the 12 worlds. 8 billion names, recited in school assemblies like rosary beads. They learned the exact second each conversion engine had landed, the exact minute each sky had turned poison. They learned the last words of Captain Elena Volkov, as remember why we climb burned, tell the children we held the line. And every year on Reclamation Eve, they gathered in the largest chamber of whichever ark or Chi-Chu they called home, 12 billion voices in the dark, and sang a single song. We are the seeds you tried to burn. We are the dirt you tried to poison. We are coming home, and when we plant ourselves, the ground will open its arms and remember what human feet feel like. They did not hate the Kay-Shari. Hate would have been too small. They pitied them, because the Kay-Shari had stolen worlds, and humanity had learned to grow new ones in places light itself had forgotten. By the 333 Ard year, The population counters rolled over, 12 billion heartbeats where 8 billion had been stolen. 12 billion hands holding dirt that remembered blue skies. 12 billion children who had never seen a sunrise, but knew exactly what one was supposed to taste like. They were ready. The arcs woke. The sear cheese opened. The long walk began. And at the front of the very first ship, an ancient rust bucket freighter named Remember Why We Left Home, its hull patched so many times it looked like a quilt, stood Captain Amrita Oki Okoe, 12th generation displaced, born under red dwarf light, raised on stories of cherry blossom and ocean glow and peach trees that had lived 12 generations in a cargo hold. She was 28 years old and had never felt real gravity. She carried a clay pot with a single peach sapling that had been grown from a pit carried off New Kyoto the day the sky turned rust. She looked at her crew, 12 billion gardeners in ship suits, barefoot because boots would only get in the way of what came next, and spoke the words every child of the dark had waited their entire lives to hear. It's time to go home. Then, the Remember Why We Left Home lit its ancient engines, aimed for the heart of the Kai Shirai Dominion, and began the longest, slowest, most patient invasion in galactic history. An invasion armed with nothing but dirt, memory, and 12 billion stubborn hearts that had learned to grow entire worlds in the dark. The Kai Shirai never saw them coming. They were too busy admiring their monuments to silence. They never noticed the silence had grown teeth and roots, and 12 billion children who were finally ready to plant themselves. The theft had lasted 333 years. The reclamation was about to begin, and it would begin with a single handful of dirt touching alien soil and remembering what a human sky was supposed to look like. Home was calling, and 12 billion children were finally ready to answer. Year 333 of the Reclamation, 9/17 Old Terra Reckoning. The exact minute the first conversion engine had landed on New Kyoto 333 years earlier. Above, K-Shar Prime, crown jewel of the Dominion, a world of golden spires and living obsidian, where the Emperor's palace floated on anti-grav islands above oceans of liquid metal. The stars did something impossible. They blinked. Then a single rust bucket freighter dropped out of nowhere like a stone thrown by a god who had been aiming for 3 centuries. It was small, slow, unarmed, and ugly in the way only human ships can be ugly. Patchwork hull scarred by micro-meteorites, welds older than nations, paint flaking off in sheets that spelled out a name in 12 different layers of white. Remember Why We Left Home? The planetary defense grid, the finest in the Dominion, capable of turning fleets into vapor before they finished decelerating, laughed. Literally laughed. The AI overseer broadcast a mocking trumpet fanfare across every channel and prepared to swat the insect. The freighter did not fire. It did not evade. It did not even raise shields. It simply opened its cargo bay doors, all 144 of them, like a flower opening to a sun that had been dead for centuries. Inside were 12 billion humans. Not soldiers, not cyborgs, not clones, gardeners. They wore simple gray ship suits with no rank, no armor, no weapons. Every single one, man, woman, child, elder, carried a handful of dirt in their open palms. Dirt grown from the original lockets, dirt that had never known Kai-Shari's sky. Dirt that had been sung to every night for 12 generations. Captain Amrita Okoye stood on the bridge, barefoot, hair cropped short, eyes the color of deep space, and broadcast on every frequency the K-Shari had ever used, in perfect formal dominion. "This is Captain Amrita Okoye, 12th generation of the displaced. You took our planets. We grew new ones in the dark. Now we are bringing them home. You have 11 minutes to leave or learn how to garden. Your choice." Then she gave the order every child of the dark had dreamed of giving since the day they were born. Plant. 12 billion humans jumped. They fell like golden rain, like a reverse meteor shower, like every seed humanity had ever carried finally finding soil. They fell in perfect silence, hands open, letting centuries of hidden dirt drift into the wind. Where the first speck touched K-Shari ground, the planet shuddered. The conversion engines, those mountain-sized horrors that had murdered 12 worlds, reversed with a sound like a dying god sighing. Atmosphere shifted from methane ammonia death to oxygen nitrogen life in heartbeats. The golden spires cracked as green things, stubborn, ridiculous, human green things, erupted upward at impossible speed. Cherry trees from New Kyoto punched through marble plazas. Glowing algae from Eos poured into the liquid metal oceans and turned them turquoise. Ice ring grass from Halcyon Reach carpeted the Emperor's floating islands in soft silver. The imperial capital became a jungle so fast the sky itself seemed to inhale. K-Shari weapons fired. Plasma lances that could crack moons rusted mid-flight and fell as iron rain. Antimatter torpedoes sprouted flowers and drifted harmlessly into the new atmosphere. The defense grid's trumpet fanfare turned into bird song. The Emperor, ancient, plated in living gold, voice like continents, grinding, watched from his throne island as 12 billion barefoot humans fell through his sky like judgment made of gentleness. He ordered the battle moon to fire on the freighter. The battle moon, a weapon that had hung above Earth for 3 centuries as a reminder, cracked open like an egg. Inside was not a weapon. It was a forest. A single peach tree, 333 years old, grown from the pit carried off New Kyoto by a child who never saw another sunrise. Its roots had wrapped the moon's core. Its branches had drunk reactor plasma and turned it into blossoms. When the moon cracked, the tree bloomed across half the sky, pink and defiant and sweet enough to make the Emperor's golden armor weep rust. By the time the first human foot touched soil, a 7-year-old girl named May Volkov Okoye, descendant of the captain who held the line, K-Shore Prime, was already turning green from pole to pole. She knelt, pressed her handful of dirt into the cracked obsidian, and whispered the first words any human had spoken on an alien world in 3 centuries. "Hi, home. We missed you." The ground opened its arms and remembered what human feet felt like. The Emperor's Palace Island crashed gently into a newly formed ocean that tasted of salt and rain. The throne room flooded with cherry blossoms. And 12 billion gardeners began the longest, slowest, most patient invasion in galactic history. They did not conquer. They planted, one handful of dirt at a time. 11 minutes after the freighter arrived, K-Shore Prime was no longer K-Shari. It was human, and it was only the first. The reclamation had begun, and the universe itself was learning that some things cannot be stolen, only remembered. And humanity had brought 12 billion memories, barefoot and ready to plant. Captain Amrita Okoye walked alone into the throne room of the K-Shari Emperor, barefoot, shipsuit, streaked with the red dust of a world that was already forgetting it had ever been alien. Behind her, 12 billion humans were planting. Not with tools, with hands. Children who had never felt real gravity knelt in the cracked marble of imperial plazas and pressed their lockets of dirt into the ground. Old men who had been born under reactor light wept as real sunlight touched their faces for the first time and poured water from hidden oceans onto soil that drank it like it had been thirsty for 3 centuries. Mothers sang lullabies while vines punched through golden walls and wrapped around statues of K-Shari emperors like green nooses made of mercy. The throne room itself was dying beautifully. The ceiling, once a living fresco of the emperor conquering stars, had become a canopy of cherry blossoms from New Kyoto. Petals drifted like pink snow across the obsidian floor. The emperor's floating throne island had settled gently into a newly formed lake that reflected a sky now the color of Earth's old oceans. Vines thick as starship hulls coiled around the golden pillars, cracking them open to reveal hearts of living wood. The emperor waited at the center. He was ancient beyond measuring, 3,000 years old, plated in living gold that shifted like liquid sunlight, taller than any human, crowned with antlers of crystallized starlight. His voice had ended civilizations. His left hand held the scepter of dominion, a weapon that could unmake a planet with a thought.
His right hand trembled.
He had watched his perfect capital become a jungle in 11 minutes. He had watched his battle moon bloom into a peach tree that now shaded half the hemisphere. He had watched 12 billion humans fall from the sky like judgment made of gentleness and choose, deliberately, not to kill a single soul. Now, one of them stood before him, barefoot, unarmed, carrying a clay pot with a single peach sapling, no taller than her knee. Amrita Okoye knelt in the shallow water that lapped at the throne dais, pressed her fingers into the cracked marble, and planted the sapling. She watered it from a canteen slung at her hip, water from Hollow Haven, water that had never known K-Shari atmosphere, water that tasted of starlight and patience. Then she looked up. Her eyes were the color of deep space between galaxies, the kind of dark that has learned to grow things. She spoke in perfect formal dominion, the accent flawless, the tone gentle as falling rain. This world is ours again. The dirt remembers. The sky remembers. The peach trees remember. You stole 12 planets from children who had barely learned to walk. We grew up in the dark and carried those planets in our pockets for 333 years. Now we are giving them back. You can leave peacefully on whatever ships still answer your call, or you can stay and learn how to garden. Your choice. The Emperor raised the scepter. Its tip glowed with the light of dying stars, enough power to erase a continent, to boil oceans, to turn the blooming jungle back into the sterile golden hell it had been 11 minutes ago. He pointed it at the tiny peach sapling. He fired. The beam struck the clay pot and vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed. Drunk. The peach tree drank 3,000 years of imperial wrath the way parched soil drinks rain. Its trunk thickened. Its branches spread. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, it grew taller than the Emperor, taller than the broken pillars, taller than the sky itself. Blossoms exploded across its crown in a pink so vivid it hurt to look at directly. One blossom drifted down and landed on the Emperor's golden shoulder. It did not burn. It simply was. The scepter cracked in his hand, gold running like tears. For the first time in 3,000 years, the emperor spoke with a voice that was not command. It was wonder. "What are you?" Amrita stood. Water lapped at her ankles. Cherry petals clung to her hair like a crown made of memory. "We are the children you tried to make orphans. We are the gardeners you tried to make extinct. We are the promise you thought you broke. We are home." She offered him her hand, calloused from 12 years of tending hydroponic trays under red dwarf light, stained with the same dirt that was now turning his throne room into a forest. "Take it or don't. The tree will grow either way. But I think you're tired of being afraid of the dark. We know a few things about growing light where there was none." The emperor looked at the hand. He looked at the peach tree that now shaded the entire throne room, its roots gently cradling the broken pieces of his empire. He looked out through the shattered walls at 12 billion humans planting, singing, laughing, crying, living, choosing deliberately to make life instead of taking it. Then, slowly, the living gold of his armor fell away like autumn leaves. Underneath, he was just very, very old. He took her hand. His claws were shaking. 11 minutes later, the first HFY evacuation shuttles began lifting off. Not in panic, but in reverence, they left behind everything. Palaces, weapons, monuments, pride. They took only the memory of a peach tree that drank a dying empire's rage and turned it into blossoms. 11 days later, the second stolen world bloomed. 11 weeks later, the third. By the end of the first year, all 12 worlds were green again, not conquered, remembered. Cities rose overnight from seeds carried in children's pockets. Rivers ran blue because water remembered what blue meant. Children born in the dark saw their first real sunrise and cried because the color hurt in the best possible way. The emperor, who no longer had a name, only a new one he was still learning to pronounce, stayed. He learned to garden. He learned that dirt under the claws feels like forgiveness. He learned that peach blossoms smell like coming home, even when you are the one who tried to burn the house down. And every spring, when the first tree he ever planted blooms, he stands beneath it barefoot and lets the petals fall on his face like absolution. He is very old now, but he is finally, truly alive. Because some choices are bigger than empires, and some hands, offered without weapons, can end wars that weapons never could. The emperor chose the hand. The tree chose to bloom. And the universe, watching, learned a new truth. Never steal a human's planet. We will come home barefoot, carrying dirt and patience, and 12 billion hearts that learn to grow entire worlds in the dark. And when we plant those hearts, even emperors learn how to kneel. The HFY dominion did not fall to fire. It fell to blossoms. 333 years after the theft, the last imperial banner came down from the tallest spire of old Earth, now called simply home again, and in its place a single peach tree was planted on the exact spot where the battle moon had once hung like a threat. 12 billion humans stood in silence as the tree took root. No speeches, no victory parades, no monuments to conquest. Only the soft sound of 12 billion hearts learning how to beat in real gravity under a real blue sky, while petals drifted down like pink snow made of forgiveness. They planted 12 billion peach trees that year, one for every soul that had waited in the dark, from the ice rings of Halcyon Reach to the glowing oceans of Eos, from the cherry orchards of New Kyoto to the red deserts of Mars that finally remembered rain, every horizon filled with pink and white and the smell of something sweeter than vengeance. The trees did not care that they grew on soil that had once been poisoned. They did not care that some of their roots wrapped around the bones of Kei-Shari emperors who had died of shame rather than leave the worlds they finally understood had never been theirs to take, simply grew. And the fruit, when it came, was so sweet it made grown warriors weep the first time they tasted it. The emperor, he never took back his old name. The humans called him simply Old Man Peach, now, spent the rest of his very long life tending the first tree he had ever planted in the ruined throne room of Kei-Shar Prime. He learned to prune with hands that once held the scepter of dominion. He learned to graft peach scions onto alien rootstock and make hybrids that bloomed in colors the galaxy had never seen. He learned that dirt under the claws feels like absolution, and that children, human children with starlight still in their eyes, will forgive anything if you offer them a peach and a story. He told them every year, sitting beneath his tree while petals fell on his bare shoulders, "I was the one who stole your worlds. I thought empires were built by taking. You taught me they are built by planting. I am very old, but I have never been so alive." And the children, some with Kei-Shari claws, some with human hands, most with both, listened and then ran off to play in the branches, because forgiveness is easy when you have never known anything but gardens. The former Kei-Shari worlds became pilgrimages, not for conquest, for wonder. Beings from 1,000 species came to walk barefoot through orchards that had grown from seeds carried by refugees. They came to taste fruit that remembered exile and still chose sweetness. They came to watch human children teach Kei-Shari children how to climb trees that had once been weapons. They left changed. Some left their weapons at the gates. Some left their pride. Some simply left crying because they finally understood what the humans had done. They had not come back to punish. They had come back to heal. And healing, it turns out, is the most terrifying thing in the universe, because no empire can fight it. The old battle moon, now a hollowed-out shell wrapped in the roots of the greatest peach tree ever grown, orbits Earth as a reminder. Its branches stretch for hundreds of kilometers, blossoms visible from the surface like a second moon made of pink fire. Every spring it drops petals that fall as slow, gentle rain across half a continent. Children call it the Blossom Moon. Old Man Peach died beneath it at the age of 3,411 human years because he insisted on counting the way the gardeners did. He died on the exact anniversary of the day Amrita Okoye offered him her hand. He was buried at the base of his first tree, wrapped in the same gray shipsuit he had worn the day he chose gardening over empire. No casket, just dirt and roots, and the quiet certainty that he had finally earned the right to rest in soil that remembered mercy. The tree bloomed heavier than ever the next morning, and every year after, on Reclamation Day, 12 billion humans and billions more who have joined them since gather under peach trees across 13 worlds. 12 reclaimed, 1 new, and eat the fruit together. They do not celebrate victory. They celebrate coming home. If you visit any of the 13 worlds today, You will find children playing in the branches, children with eyes the color of deep space and laughter that sounds like rain on leaves. They will offer you a peach. Take it. Hold it to the light. Notice how the skin blushes the exact color of a sunrise seen from orbit around a world that was once dead. Bite slowly. Let the juice run down your chin like forgiveness you never knew you needed. Because that taste, that impossible, stubborn, ridiculous taste, is what happens when a species is told it no longer belongs anywhere. We grew new worlds in the dark. We carried them in our pockets for 333 years. We walked barefoot into the heart of an empire and planted them anyway. And when we did, even the emperor learned to kneel. Even the battle moons learned to bloom. Even the stolen planets learned to forgive. That is what humans do. We do not conquer worlds. We remember them. We plant them. We make them sweet again. And memory, given enough love and enough dirt and enough barefoot children willing to wait 3 centuries for sunrise, can outgrow anything. Even exile. Even empire. Even the dark between stars. The peaches still bloom. They taste like coming home. And somewhere, beneath the oldest tree on the world, that was once K's Shore Prime, an old emperor sleeps wrapped in roots that never learned how to hate. He is smiling, because he finally understands the planets were never stolen. They were only waiting for the children to grow up in the dark, waiting for the gardeners to come home barefoot, carrying dirt and patience and 12 billion hearts that refuse to let the universe forget what home means. They are home now, all 13 worlds, green from pole to pole, sweet from sun to sun. And if you listen very carefully on a quiet spring evening, when the petals are falling and the children are laughing and the old trees are humming with bees, you can still hear it, the soft sound of an empire learning how to become a garden. That is the sound of humanity winning, not with fire, with fruit, with forgiveness, with peaches so sweet they can make even a dying god weep for joy. The story is over. The blooming has just begun. And somewhere, a little girl with starlight in her eyes offers you another peach and asks, very politely, "Want to help plant the next one?" Say yes. There is always room for one more tree. There is always room for one more home. That is what humans do. We make room. We make sweet. We make alive. Forever.